Hey everyone, in this week's video I'm going to show you how I route everything in my studio to get it into the computer to make it the most streamlined as possible, so I'm not worrying about what's working, what's not working, how to get the sound and everything like that. This is what's worked for me after buying and selling a lot of equipment and trying to get everything to work, and I feel like it's pretty good. I mean, it could always be better, but let me show you how I'm routing everything, and then hopefully this can help you when you're setting up your studio. So you can see in this is the general template that I have when I start a session. I can do a video about this, but I mean, it's nothing too crazy. I have a bunch of audio tracks, some MIDI, I have all of my outboard gear, and then I have some audio down the bottom. This is so when I'm doing a remix, I can just pull the parts in and then cut them all up and then start placing them and working them up in this section here. If I come over to them, I have some effects already routed, just some simple reverbs and delays and stuff like that, stuff that you're going to need all the time. So the main thing I wanted to show you was when I come across to MIDI, and we're going to go into sync, MIDI sync project. You can see I've got it going out of port 7 on Express, and that's on the Motu Express that's just in front of me here. And you can see, I talk about this a little bit later, but when I push play in Logic, you can kind of see here the lights start to light up. So it's going in Logic and then it's triggering that. I have that the same for this rack and the same for this rack. So for MIDI, I'm sending out, each instrument has its own MIDI in and out, so I can play something from the instrument and bring it in, or I can send something out of the instrument back out to it. That way I can record some MIDI. Maybe you don't like part of the performance, can go and change it a little bit and then send it back out to that same synth again. But for the clock, I'm sending it so when I sync for Logic, when I just push play, it's going to trigger all of my sequences here, and it will do the same on the other rack. It's the best way that I found. Obviously you can get more expensive things, but for this I found that it works really well, and yeah, it's what I've been using for a fair while now. So here is my setup. This is the main sort of area. I like to have the main bits and pieces that I'm kind of focused on at the moment. You can see I've got the M8 and the MPC Live there. To the right, I've got the Digitac and the tape machine. And you can also see in the racks just above it, I have some MIDI interfaces, and then obviously my audio interfaces. And then down to the right, you can see I have a load of patch bays and other bits and pieces. As I come over to the right, you can see we have the first of the synth stands, and then just to the right, we have the second lot. And I kind of have them divided into two parts. So I have the poly instruments for the most part on the right hand side, and then drum machines and whatnot on the left. And then as we come around to the back, probably you've seen this in the back here, I have a Launchpad Pro and some Volcas that I like to pull in and out for different projects and whatnot. So as you can see, my little reflection there saying hello. We've got the two Motu 128 MIDI Expresses, and I've gone along and I've just named all the bits and pieces that I'm using on there. So you can see Monopoly, MS-20, Peak, and that goes, each of those are being sent out, and I have the MIDI cables going to each individual synths. And as you can see at the end here, we have clock. We have clock on the end of each. I keep it on 7 because I want to keep the 8 here open, so people, if I've got an item that I want to plug straight into the MIDI port there, I don't have to worry about the two ports messing with each other. And then underneath it, I just have my 16 channels from my interface. I find that this is the easiest way to work. I can patch things in, control the input gain via here. Has a nice guide here on each of these so I can see how much, if I'm clipping or whatnot, and then from there it goes into Logic. So you probably can't see it in this from this shot, but I've gone and I've named all of the inputs and outputs for all of the equipment in the studio, whether that be the audio interfaces or the synths and drum machines and whatnot. And this way, if I'm working on something and I'm like, okay, cool, let's go with the monopoly. I can just come along, monopoly, bang, and then we just choose a channel to go into. We can go channel 4, the 8 pre, boom. Super, super simple. This, while it looks a bit daunting because there's so much going on, I feel like this principle is really good, and it's something that like a lot of people can incorporate into their studio. If you find yourself unplugging and plugging in synths into your interface, if you have only 2 inputs on your interface and you have 3 synths or 1 mono synth and then 1 stereo synth, I would get a patch bay and then start by patching it in, and then you can use the same principles I've done here where you can patch in the bits and pieces you need. Makes it super, super simple. You're not having to reach around the back of the interface and plug and unplug and all that sort of stuff. And I just find that this is one of the main things that streamlined my studio when I was putting it together. And I definitely made a lot of mistakes, but this was one of the main things that I'm super, super happy with. So I talked about the clocking of from the Motu, the two 8x8. One other thing that I like to do as well, I send the clock out, but then in the back here, you can see I have these Kenton through 5s. And this is a good way that you can separate a clock. So I have the clock coming in and then it's going out to all these different spots. So if I push play on Logic, you can see that everything starts up. We have a couple of items that are going over overbridge, so that's the analog rhythm and the Digitech. But for the other pieces like the TR8, the Octatrack, and then as we go underneath, the ER1, they're all going via that one clock. So that way I'm just sending one clock out of Logic and it's going to multiple places. Makes it super easy to sync everything up and make sure everything's going as it should be. So this pit is majority of polysynths, and we also have some modular. So we have the TTSH, the ARP 2600 clone up here, and then I have the Arturia BeatStep Pro to control that and some other bits and pieces. And then I also have a 12U modular, which sadly doesn't get used as much as it should for what it can do, but it's still there and still good to have a little bit of fun with it. As we go into the first drawer, you can see I have the little modular system that you probably would have seen in some other videos. And then we have just an old circuit, the Syncussion that you saw in one of the other videos, and then the OP1. OP1 is just here pretty much for storage at the moment, but it because it's just so portable, it just can find its way into the lounge room and whatnot. And again, the BeatStep Pro is clocked with Logic as well, much like the TR8 and whatnot. As we come down, the first layer here, the second layer, we have the Alpha Juno 2. Again, this is connected via its own MIDI, and then we also have the controller here as well, which was kind of hard to get. I managed to get it when I was out playing some shows in Chicago. I have the Prophet 08, and then down the bottom, the Beast, the 106. The bottom drawer is pretty much just for junk at the moment, but it's good to have that extra little space in there as well. So on the top, you can see we have the MS-20 and the Monopoly. The Monopoly doesn't have MIDI just yet. It's coming very, very soon. And then we also have the Monotron the delay and the regular. These ones are just set up automatically so I can just route the audio via outside of Logic and then through these, same as I did in the getting dirt on your drums tutorial. So it's already routed, ready for that to go. The next row is just all drum machines. We have the Octatrack. Obviously it's a sampler, but I pretty much just treat it much like a drum machine. I have the TR8 in the middle, definitely the workhorse of the studio. Super, super fast to create sounds on it. Really, really easy to get things going. I have all the old vintage packs loaded onto it. So I have the 808, 909, 707, 727 and whatnot all on here. Makes things really, really simple when it comes to jamming. I can kind of super, super easy see, okay, I want the bass drum, I want some snare, get some hats on there and whatnot, and just kind of take my attention off menu diving and whatnot, and then start to sort of play in some other musical ideas. And then over here at the end, this is my absolute workhorse, the analog rhythm for sampling. When I'm creating sample packs, this is my go-to. For when I'm first starting, this is my go-to for everything. I'll load a bunch of my own hits and whatnot into it, and then from there I will start to layer them up with the synth sounds, and you can get super, super original sounds from there. Really, really good piece of equipment. I'm really glad that I purchased it. So this row is all about acid. We have the 101, we have the 303, the 606, and then the ER1. As I showed you before, the ER1 is clocked to the MIDI through 5 on the next row up, but the 303 has the MIDI mod to it, so that one I just control via the computer. And then for the 101, I have a couple of different options. I can use the mini modular, I can use the BeatStep Pro, or I can use one of the sequences that's on the big Eurorack case to kind of control it and get different flavors and different sort of patterns. Or I have a MIDI to CV and gate on the big Eurorack case. So then if all else fails and I know exactly what I want to do, I can just use that, do CV gate in, and just use MIDI to write the pattern. Next up we have the Beast from ASM Hydrasynth. The Hydrasynth. I'm doing a pack of presets on this at the moment. So this spot is usually the front and center spot. I can sit perfectly behind it and then create the sounds. It makes it super easy to work and whatnot. And at the moment I'm really digging it. Slowly getting through, making some good sounds. But yeah, this is the kind of the go-to spot for whichever synth is the main thing at the moment. I do have the spot in front of me at the computer, but because this is so big, I kind of like it to be off to the side a little bit more. Next row down, we have the DeepMind 6. Sadly, it doesn't really get used at all. I've made a couple of sounds on it. Just, I don't know, I seem to have to work far too hard to get anything kind of that I'm really happy with. With that said, it does make really good sounds, and it sounds decent. I don't know, it's just definitely one of those forgotten pieces in the studio. And especially when I've got the Deckard's Dream Mark II next to it. Was lucky enough that I created the full bank for the version 2. So if you got yourself a Deckard's Dream version 2, all of those presets on there I made. So hopefully you're digging them. And if you don't, well, I'm sorry. But it is a great synth to program, so I'm sure you could just dump those out and make some awesome sounds on your own. And this is the final row. We have some guitar pedals and bits and pieces. I don't mind using the RE20, but once I got the Ninja Tune delay, pretty much the RE20 didn't get used again. I've got this cool, get in the shot there, cool little synthesizer. It makes like 808 style hits and whatnot. It's pretty cool. And then obviously the peak. Definitely need to move some things around because the peak is one of my most used synths, and I just did a video with it, so I need to kind of reshuffle everything around so that gets a bit more, has a bit more use and a good spot to use it. And then this is a little reel-to-reel tape machine that one of my friends got me, and if I get this in shot, you can see it's a Craig brand, which is pretty cool. So this is to the right of my desk. This is above the patch bay. You can see I have the Digitech, which is set up over overbridge, and the tape machine all going in and out through the patch bay as well. Obviously with overbridge, the audio in and out isn't needed, but I still like to have the in for the Digitech so I can record in from the other elements. I have the circuit here. It's not connected or anything, but my brain can't handle that. It needs to be filled, so that looked like a good spot for it. And underneath, I have the analog heat and the Zen delay. Both are just routed through the patch bay as well. So if I want to add some more dirt to any bits and pieces and whatnot, I can. The one big thing as well with the analog heat is it's also over overbridge. So since my computer can do it, as many things as I can do over overbridge. That's a tongue tie. And I get really good results. So happy with how that's all set up. And then I can, as I'm sitting down at the desk, I can also reach over, I can change this and kind of play around with the delay. And I can also play around with this if I don't want to click the mouse for the analog heat. So hopefully you got something out of that video. There's a lot sort of going on with what I have equipment wise and whatnot. Obviously you don't need nearly as much stuff as I have, but I think the principles of having a dedicated MIDI interface so you don't have to do stuff over USB and everything like that, and a patch bay so then you can just patch in at the front and you don't have to pull cables in and out, is the main two pieces in my studio to get used all the time. And they might not be the most fun pieces, but without them it would be an absolute pain in the butt to get the sounds into the computer. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you want to check out another one, there's another 1 or 2 videos above you here, or above me rather, and hopefully I've inspired you to maybe clean up your studio but create something today, and that's the main thing. Until next time, see you later.